I was 7 years old when I first understood that I was the spare child. It wasn't something anyone said outright. It was quieter than that, more insidious. It lived in the way my mother's eyes would light up when Catherine walked into a room and merely acknowledge me when I followed. It was there in the piano recitals where Catherine's performances earned standing ovations and mine earned polite applause. It existed in every family photo where she stood at the center, golden and glowing, while I lingered at the edge like an afterthought. Catherine was 3 years older, and those 3 years might as well have been a lifetime. She had inherited my mother's delicate features and my father's sharp intelligence, a combination that made her magnetic in a way I could never replicate. I got my father's broad shoulders and my mother's anxious disposition. Not quite pretty enough, not quite brilliant enough, not quite anything enough. I learned early to make myself small, to celebrate Catherine's achievements as if they were my own. To laugh at family dinners when my father would joke about his successful daughter and her lovely sister, as if success and loveliness were mutually exclusive categories, and I had been firmly placed in the latter. I learned to swallow the ache in my chest when my mother would spend hours helping Catherine pick out the perfect dress for a dance, while suggesting I wear one of Catherine's hand-me-downs. By the time I was in high school, I had perfected the art of being invisible. I didn't try to compete anymore. What was the point? Catherine was captain of the debate team, president of the honor society, prom queen. I was present. I got good grades, but not excellent ones. I had friends, but not many. I existed in Catherine's shadow so completely that sometimes I wondered if I cast one of my own. College was supposed to be different. I chose a university 3 states away, far enough that Catherine's reputation couldn't reach. For 4 years, I breathed. I discovered I was good at things when I wasn't being compared to my sister. I found I could make people laugh. I even fell in love once, though it didn't last. But for those 4 years, I was just Emma, not Catherine's sister, just Emma. Then I graduated and moved back home to save money while I looked for a job in marketing. It took exactly 3 days for the old patterns to reassert themselves. Catherine had become even more impressive in my absence. She was a corporate lawyer now, working for one of those firms with multiple last names in the title. She had a corner office view, a wardrobe full of designer suits, and apparently a boyfriend, James Mitchell. Even his name sounded expensive. I met him at a family dinner 2 weeks after I moved back. He was exactly the type of man my mother had always dreamed would marry into our family. Tall, handsome in that effortless way some men are, with dark hair that was just slightly too long to be corporate, but not long enough to be rebellious. He wore a watch that probably cost more than my car and spoke about wine pairings with the casual confidence of someone who had never questioned their place in the world. "Emma," he said, shaking my hand with a firm grip and a smile that showed very white teeth. "Catherine's told me so much about you." I doubted that was true, but I smiled anyway. "All good things, I hope." "Of course." His eyes held mine for just a moment longer than necessary before he turned back to Catherine, slipping his arm around her waist with practiced ease. I watched them throughout dinner. The way he would lean in to whisper something that made her laugh, the way she touched his arm when she spoke. They looked like they belonged in a magazine spread about beautiful people living beautiful lives. My mother couldn't stop beaming. My father kept refilling James's wine glass and talking about the golf course at his club. "Isn't he wonderful?" my mother gushed to me later while we were clearing plates. Catherine and James had gone out to the garden, and I could see them through the window, her head on his shoulder, his arms wrapped around her. Finally, Catherine has found someone worthy of her. Worthy of her, as if Catherine were a prize to be won, and James had proven himself the victor. I said nothing, just loaded the dishwasher while my mother continued to enumerate James's virtues. His successful hedge fund career, his family's summer home in the Hamptons, his undergraduate degree from Yale. The engagement announcement came 3 months later. It was orchestrated, of course. Catherine never did anything without perfect planning. She invited the whole family to dinner at an expensive restaurant, the kind where the menu doesn't list prices and the sommelier has opinions about everything. She waited until dessert had been served, then stood up, James rising beside her. "We have some news," she said, her voice clear and bright. James took her hand, and even before he pulled out the ring box, I knew what was coming. The ring was enormous. A diamond that caught the light and scattered it across the white tablecloth like stars. My mother actually cried. My father ordered champagne, the expensive kind, and made a toast about how he always knew his daughter would marry someone exceptional. His daughter, I noticed, singular. I raised my glass with everyone else. I smiled until my cheeks hurt. I hugged Catherine when she came around the table, and I told her I was happy for her, and I even meant it, in a way. I was happy for her. I was also exhausted by her. By the way, everything in her life unfolded like a fairy tale while I was still struggling to get callbacks for entry-level positions. But that night, watching her glow in the candlelight with her perfect ring and her perfect fiancé, I felt something shift inside me, a small, quiet resignation. This was how it would always be. Catherine would continue to collect achievements like charms on a bracelet, and I would continue to watch from the sidelines, applauding politely. The wedding planning consumed the next 6 months like wildfire. My mother turned into someone I barely recognized, a woman obsessed with seating charts and floral arrangements, and whether the invitations should be ecru or ivory. Catherine was only slightly less intense, though she maintained her composure better. She hired a wedding planner, of course, someone famous who had done events for minor celebrities. I waited for my assignment. Maid of honor, probably, though Catherine and I had never been particularly close, or at least a bridesmaid. A reading during the ceremony? Something. The weeks passed. My mother would come home with updates about dress fittings and venue tours, but she never mentioned my role. When I asked casually one evening what I could do to help, she waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Catherine has everything under control, dear. The wedding planner is handling it all." Right, but I meant, for the bridal party, what color are the bridesmaid dresses? When are the fittings? My mother looked at me with something that might have been pity. Catherine's keeping the wedding party small, just her college roommate and James's sister. The words didn't compute at first. I stared at her, waiting for the joke, the punchline, "but of course you'll be involved somehow." It didn't come. I'm not a bridesmaid? "The wedding is going to be quite intimate, Emma. Catherine wants to keep it simple." Simple. The wedding that had consumed every conversation in our house for 6 months. The wedding with the famous planner and the venue that required a year's advance booking. The wedding my mother had described as the social event of the season. That wedding was too simple to include me? But I'm her sister. I know, sweetheart, but it's Catherine's day. She gets to choose how she wants it. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not a dramatic shattering, just a small, clean break. Like a hairline fracture in porcelain that no one else would notice, but that would never quite heal. "Am I at least invited?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. My mother hesitated. Actually hesitated. Of course you're invited to the reception, Emma, but the ceremony itself is going to be very private, immediate family only, and since the venue has limited capacity. I am immediate family. You know what I mean, parents and grandparents. They're keeping it incredibly small. She was lying. I could see it in the way she wouldn't meet my eyes, in the way she busied herself with straightening papers that didn't need straightening. But I didn't call her on it. What would be the point? I went to my room and closed the door carefully, quietly. I sat on my bed in the dark and felt the familiar ache of being less than settle over me like a well-worn coat. Of course, Catherine didn't want me at her wedding. Why would she? I had never been part of her story except as a foil, a contrast to make her shine brighter. But this felt different. This wasn't just being overlooked or overshadowed. This was being actively excluded from one of the most important days of our family's life. This was being told explicitly that I didn't matter enough to witness my own sister's wedding. I didn't cry. I was too angry for tears. Instead, I lay there in the dark and felt something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. A determination, a clarity. If I didn't matter to them, then they didn't get to matter to me anymore. The next morning, I started job hunting in earnest, not locally, cities far away, New York, Seattle, Portland, anywhere that wasn't here. I updated my resume, reached out to every connection I had, applied to positions I was only marginally qualified for, and I started paying attention. Not in an obvious way. I didn't suddenly become the hovering sister asking questions about the wedding. I just watched. I listened. I noticed things. Like the way James's smile never quite reached his eyes when he looked at Catherine. Like the way he checked his phone constantly, even during family dinners. And how he would excuse himself to take calls in another room. Like the way Catherine's perfection had started to have cracks in it. How she snapped at my mother over the color of the napkins. How she seemed stressed in a way that went beyond normal wedding planning anxiety. I started doing some casual research, nothing invasive, just Google searches. James Mitchell wasn't a particularly uncommon name, but hedge fund managers left digital footprints. Articles about market trends that quoted him, his company's website with his professional photo, his LinkedIn profile. And then, because I was curious and had too much time on my hands and was perhaps a little vindictive, I started going deeper. Public records, social media, the kind of surface-level investigation anyone could do with enough patience and internet access. I found his Facebook profile, locked down to non-friends, but his photos were public. I scrolled through them methodically. Pictures from charity galas and business conferences, pictures of him skiing in Aspen, sailing in the Caribbean, attending what looked like a college reunion. I almost missed it. It was buried deep in his timeline from 3 years ago. A photo of him at a beach, golden hour light, his arm around a woman who wasn't Catherine. The caption read, "Paradise with my paradise," followed by a heart emoji. The woman was blonde, pretty, laughing at the camera. She appeared in several other photos from around the same time. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. I checked the dates. 3 years ago. Around the time James would have been with Catherine? They'd been dating for 3 years, according to family lore. She'd mentioned meeting him at a work function. Love at first sight. The whole romantic story. I kept digging. Found the woman's profile, Amanda Reynolds. Her relationship status said, "It's complicated." Her photos went quiet about 2.5 years ago, right around when James and Catherine had apparently gotten serious. But here's what was interesting. Amanda still liked James's posts. Not all of them, but enough. Recent ones, including one from just 2 months ago, a professional photo of him receiving some industry award. Her like was buried among dozens of others, easy to miss unless you were looking. I sat back, my heart beating faster than it should. This could be nothing. An ex-girlfriend who remained on friendly terms. People did that. It didn't mean anything. Except, I created a fake Facebook profile, generic name, stock photo, just enough information to look real. I sent Amanda a friend request, not expecting much. She accepted the next day. Her private photos told a different story than her public ones, more recent, including several from the past year where she was conspicuously not alone. Dinner dates where the other person's face was cropped out. A photo of 2 wine glasses clinking together, captioned, "Reunions are sweet." A picture of a man's hand holding hers, no face visible, but I recognize the watch, that expensive watch James wore. The photo was dated 4 months ago. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated, armed with proof that Catherine's perfect life had flaws after all. Instead, I felt sick. Because whatever else Catherine was, whatever complicated, painful history we had, she was still my sister. And she was about to marry someone who was cheating on her. I spent 3 days deciding what to do. Tell her directly? She'd never believe me. I was the jealous little sister, the one who wasn't good enough to be in her wedding party. Anything I said would be dismissed as petty revenge. Tell my mother? Same problem. She'd probably accuse me of fabricating evidence out of spite. Confront James? And say what? I internet stalked you and I think you're cheating? He'd deny it, and I had no hard proof. Just photos that could be explained away and a gut feeling. I could do nothing. Let Catherine marry him. Let her discover the truth on her own time. It wasn't my problem. She'd made it clear I wasn't really family anymore, so why should I care? But I found I did care. Underneath all the resentment and hurt, underneath years of feeling invisible and less than, there was still a part of me that remembered being 7 years old, following my big sister around, thinking she was the most amazing person in the world. I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed something concrete. So I did something I'm not entirely proud of. I started following James. Not physically. I'm not a private detective, and I valued my dignity too much for that. But I started tracking his patterns online. Check-ins at restaurants, tagged photos. A well-established social media presence leaves a trail if you know how to look. And then I got lucky. Or maybe not lucky. Maybe the universe was just tired of watching me get stepped on. I was at a coffee shop downtown, working on yet another cover letter for yet another job I probably wouldn't get, when I saw him, James. He was at a corner table, his back to most of the room, but I recognized him immediately. And he wasn't alone. The blonde woman from the photos sat across from him, Amanda. They weren't being particularly careful. His hand covered hers on the table. They leaned close when they talked. At one point, she brushed something from his jacket with an intimacy that spoke of long familiarity. I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Not obviously. I pretended to be on a call, holding my phone naturally, but the camera was pointed in their direction. I got 3 minutes of footage. Them holding hands. Him kissing her knuckles. Her reaching up to touch his face. Then I paid for my coffee and left before they could notice me. I watched the video probably 20 times that night. Each time, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at James for being a cheating bastard. Pity for Catherine for not knowing. And underneath it all, something darker. A grim satisfaction that her perfect life was built on a lie. But what was I supposed to do with this information? I still couldn't just show up and present evidence like I was prosecuting a case. Catherine wouldn't thank me for it. She'd probably find a way to rationalize it, to blame me somehow. The wedding was in 2 weeks. Catherine had stopped coming to family dinners, too busy with final preparations. The one time I'd seen her, briefly, when she stopped by to pick up something from my mother, she'd looked stressed and tired. But when I'd asked if she was okay, she'd just smiled that tight smile and said, "Everything's fine, Emma. Everything's perfect." Everything was not perfect, but she didn't want to hear it. Not from me. I almost gave up, almost convinced myself it wasn't my responsibility. Then my mother mentioned, casually over breakfast, that I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner either. "It's just the wedding party and immediate family," she said, not looking at me. "You understand?" I understood perfectly. I understood that to them, I was not immediate family. I was ancillary, optional, excludable. That night, I made a decision. I would tell Catherine. Not out of concern or sisterly love or any noble motivation. I would tell her because I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. I would tell her because maybe, just maybe, this would make her see me for once. Really see me. I drove to her apartment, the nice one in the expensive part of town, the one with the doorman and the marble lobby. I'd been there maybe 3 times. She never invited me over. The doorman called up, and I waited, half expecting her to refuse to see me. But she buzzed me up, and when I got to her door, she was standing there in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, looking more human than I'd seen her in months. "Emma, what's wrong? Did something happen to Mom or Dad?" "No, everyone's fine. I need to talk to you." She hesitated, then stepped aside to let me in. Her apartment was immaculate, as expected. Minimalist furniture, expensive art on the walls, a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. It looked like a magazine spread. It looked like no one actually lived there. "What's this about?" she asked, not offering me a seat. "I have a lot to do tonight. The wedding is—" "I know when your wedding is." I pulled out my phone. "I need to show you something." "Emma, if this is about the bridesmaid thing, I already explained." "It's not about that." I opened the video. "It's about James." I watched her face as she watched the footage. Saw the confusion turn to recognition, turn to something harder, more complicated. When it ended, she was silent for a long moment. Then she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Where did you get this?" "I saw them at a coffee shop. Catherine, he's cheating on you." She laughed, actually laughed. It was a hollow sound. "Of course you'd think that." "I'm not thinking anything. I'm showing you." "You're showing me a video you took while spying on my fiancé. How long have you been following him, Emma? How long have you been trying to dig up dirt?" I wasn't trying to dig up dirt. I found this by accident, and then I started paying attention. And Catherine, there are photos. There's evidence going back months. Photos from the internet. Photos you've probably misinterpreted because you can't stand to see me happy. The unfairness of it hit me like a physical blow. You think I want you to be unhappy? I think you've spent your whole life resenting me for being successful. And now that I'm getting married, you can't handle it. So you've invented this elaborate story to try to ruin my wedding. I'm not inventing anything. Catherine, please, just look at the evidence. Get out. What? Get out of my apartment and stay away from my wedding. I don't want you there. I'm not invited anyway, remember? Good, because after this stunt, you're not invited to anything. Not the wedding, not the family. I'm done with you, Emma. I should have argued more, should have tried harder to make her see, but the words wouldn't come. I just stood there, feeling that old familiar invisibility settle over me, and then I turned and walked out. I cried on the drive home. Big, ugly sobs that made it hard to see the road. Not because Catherine had rejected the truth, I'd half expected that, but because of how easily she dismissed me, how quickly she'd assumed the worst, how little she thought of me, that she believed I'd fabricate evidence out of spite. When I got home, my parents were still up, watching television. My mother took one look at my face and frowned. "Emma, what happened?" Almost poured out the whole story. The video, the photos, Catherine's rejection, but I looked at my mother's concerned face and remembered how she'd lit up when Catherine announced her engagement, how happy she'd been planning this wedding, how she'd called James worthy of Catherine. "Nothing," I said, "just a bad day." I went to my room and stared at the ceiling. Catherine would marry James in 2 weeks. He'd probably keep cheating. She'd probably find out eventually. And when she did, she'd deal with everything. She'd get a quiet divorce, spin it into a narrative about being too good for him, and move on with her life. And I'd still be the invisible sister, the one who'd tried to warn her and been rejected, the one who wasn't good enough to be part of the family. I thought that was the end of it. I'd tried. I'd failed. Story of my life. Then, 3 days before the wedding, Amanda Reynolds reached out to me. It was a message on the fake Facebook profile I'd created, the one I'd used to friend her. Simple and direct. "I know who you are. We need to talk." My first instinct was to delete the profile and pretend none of this had happened, but curiosity got the better of me. I messaged back, "How did you know?" Her response came quickly. "Your profile is fake, but you liked several photos. Facebook suggests friends of friends. I saw your real profile in James's photos. You're Catherine's sister. Why are you following me?" I sat there for 10 minutes trying to figure out how to respond. Finally, I just told her the truth. I thought James was cheating. I wanted to warn my sister. She didn't believe me. There was a longer pause this time. Then, "Can we meet? Tomorrow? There are things you should know." We met at a park, neutral territory. She was prettier in person, with an openness in her face that the photos hadn't captured. She looked nervous, clutching a coffee cup like it was a lifeline. "I'm sorry," she said before I could even sit down. "I know this is weird. I needed to talk to someone, and you're the only person who seems to see what's really happening." "What is really happening?" I asked, sitting on the bench beside her. She took a breath. "James and I were together for 4 years. We lived together. We talked about getting married. Then one day he came home and said he'd met someone at work. Someone with better connections. Those were his words. Better connections. He moved out a week later. Catherine?" I looked her up after he left. Corporate lawyer from a wealthy family. I understood why he chose her. James is ambitious. He loves success more than he loves people. "But you're still seeing him?" She looked down at her coffee. "He reached out to me 6 months ago. Said he'd made a mistake. Said he missed me." I was stupid enough to believe him. Her voice cracked. "I thought maybe if he saw we still had something, he'd call off the wedding. But he won't, because Catherine is too valuable. Her family connections, her father's business contacts. I'm the person he actually wants to be with, but she's the person who makes sense for his career." I felt something twist in my chest. Does he love her at all? I don't think James knows how to love anyone except himself. We sat in silence for a moment. 2 women, both hurt by the same man in different ways. Both invisible to the person who should have seen them. "The wedding's in 3 days," I said finally. "Catherine won't believe me when I tell her." "She won't believe me either. Why would she?" I'm the ex-girlfriend. I'm bitter and jealous and probably lying. So he just gets away with it? Amanda turned to look at me, and there was something steely in her eyes. Unless we make sure he doesn't. What do you mean? I mean, Catherine deserves to know the truth. Not from us telling her, because she won't listen, but maybe if she sees it herself, on her wedding day. When there are hundreds of witnesses, and it's too late for James to charm his way out of it. You want to crash the wedding. I want to tell the truth at the one moment when Catherine can't ignore it. She paused. I know you're not invited, but I am. You're invited to my sister's wedding? James put me on the guest list. He thought it was funny, I think. Or maybe he wanted to hedge his bets, keep me close. But I have an invitation, and I have evidence. She pulled out her phone and showed me her messages with James. Months of them. Recent ones. Including several from the past week with lines like, "Can't wait for this charade to be over," and "2 more days of playing devoted fiancé." I stared at the messages. He's planning to keep seeing you after the wedding. He never planned to stop. The audacity of it, the sheer sociopathic confidence that he could have both. That he could marry Catherine for her connections and keep Amanda for whatever emotional gap she filled. That neither of them would find out or would simply accept it. I don't want to ruin my sister's wedding, I said slowly. Despite everything, I don't want to hurt her like that. Letting her marry a man who doesn't love her, who's using her, who's cheating on her before they even say their vows, that's not protecting her, that's protecting him. She was right. I knew she was right. But there was a difference between knowing something intellectually and being ready to act on it. What exactly are you proposing? I show up to the wedding. During the ceremony, when they ask if anyone objects, I stand up and tell the truth, show the messages. Make it impossible for James to lie his way out. That's dramatic, yes, cruel, maybe, but effective. And honestly, after what he's done to both of us, to your sister, don't you think he deserves a little public humiliation? I thought about Catherine's face when she'd accused me of making up stories, thought about my mother saying I wasn't immediate family, thought about a lifetime of being invisible while Catherine shone. I think, I said carefully, that Catherine deserves the truth, but I don't think ambushing her at the altar is the way. Amanda's face fell. So you won't help? I didn't say that. An idea was forming. Not revenge exactly, more like justice. I'll help, but we're going to be smart about it. The wedding was on a Saturday afternoon at an estate venue an hour outside the city. Rolling grounds, a historic mansion, gardens that looked like they'd been lifted from a Jane Austen novel. Of course, Catherine had chosen somewhere impossibly romantic and photogenic. I wasn't invited, but that didn't mean I couldn't be there. I drove out early while the vendors were still setting up. Parked at a coffee shop a mile away and walked through the woods that bordered the property. Found a spot with a good view of the ceremony site, a lawn overlooking a lake, rows of white chairs, an arch covered in flowers that probably cost more than my car. I had binoculars. I had my phone, fully charged. I had a thermos of coffee and a lot of nervous energy. Amanda had her invitation. She had the messages, and she had a plan that I'd helped her refine. We'd gone over it a dozen times, looking for flaws, trying to anticipate every possible outcome. The guests started arriving around noon. I recognized some of them, aunts and uncles, my parents' friends, James's business associates, Everyone dressed in their expensive best, carrying elegantly wrapped gifts, smiling and laughing like they were attending the social event of the season, which, according to my mother, they were. My parents arrived together, my mother in a pale blue dress that made her look younger than her years, my father in his best suit. They looked happy, proud. My mother kept touching her hair, checking her phone, probably coordinating last-minute details. I felt a pang of something, not quite guilt. More like sadness. They had no idea that the perfect day they'd been planning for months was about to implode. Then Catherine arrived. Even from a distance, even through binoculars, she was stunning. Her dress was simple and elegant, not the poofy princess gown I'd half expected. It fit her perfectly, highlighting her figure without being showy. Her hair was up in an intricate style, small flowers woven through it. She looked like a bride from a fairy tale. She looked happy. I lowered the binoculars and closed my eyes. For a moment, I let myself imagine just leaving. Walking back through the woods, getting in my car, driving away. Let Catherine have her wedding. Let her figure out James's deception on her own time. It wasn't my responsibility to save her from her own choices. But then I remembered her face when she'd ordered me out of her apartment. The dismissal, the contempt, the absolute certainty that I was lying, that I was motivated by jealousy rather than concern. I raised the binoculars again. The ceremony started at 2 o'clock precisely. The officiant took his place under the flower arch. James stood beside him, looking nervous but handsome in his tuxedo. The music started. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle, Catherine's college roommate and James's sister, both in pale pink dresses. Then Catherine appeared, my father's arm linked through hers. They walked slowly down the aisle, and I could see my mother dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. My father looked proud. Catherine looked radiant. I pulled out my phone and texted Amanda, "They're starting." Her response came immediately, "Ready." The ceremony proceeded with typical wedding formality. Readings about love and commitment. The officiant talking about the sanctity of marriage. James and Catherine exchanging practiced smiles. Then came the moment. If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. It's a tradition that almost never gets interrupted. The officiant had barely finished the words when he was ready to move on. But Amanda stood up. She was in the third row, close enough to be clearly visible. She didn't shout. She just stood, and the movement was enough to make everyone turn and look. "I do," she said. Her voice was clear and steady. "I have a reason." The reaction was immediate, gasps from the guests, my mother's hand flying to her mouth, James's face going pale, and Catherine turning to look at the woman who'd interrupted her wedding, confusion and anger warring on her face. "I'm sorry," Amanda said, and she sounded like she meant it. "But you deserve to know the truth before you make this commitment." "Security," James said quickly. "Someone get security." "No," Catherine said. Her voice cut through the murmurs. "Let her speak." Amanda walked into the aisle. Slowly, like she was giving herself time to change her mind. But she didn't change her mind. She walked until she was standing at the front, facing Catherine and James. "My name is Amanda Reynolds," she said, "and I've been having an affair with your fiancé. Not past tense, present, including 3 nights ago." The gasps were louder now. My father half rose from his seat. James was shaking his head, but his face had gone from pale to red. "That's insane," he said. "Catherine, I've never seen this woman before." "Yes, you have," Amanda interrupted. She pulled out her phone. You've seen me every week for the past 6 months. You've told me you love me. You've told me the wedding is just a formality, that you're marrying her for her family's connections, but you'll always come back to me." She held up her phone, the messages visible even from a distance. "I have texts, I have photos, I have voicemails, and I'm done being your secret." Catherine stood frozen. She looked at James, and even from my hiding spot in the woods, I could see the moment her world shifted, the moment she saw through the lies. "Let me see the phone," she said, quietly. Amanda handed it to her. Catherine scrolled through the messages, her face becoming progressively more blank. That blank look was worse than anger. It was the look of someone whose entire reality had just been rewritten. "Catherine," James started, reaching for her, "you can't believe." "Don't touch me." Her voice was ice. She kept scrolling. The guests had gone silent, everyone watching this private devastation unfold in the most public way possible. Finally, she looked up, not at James, at Amanda. "How long?" "We were together for 4 years. He left me when he met you." "He came back 6 months after he proposed." Catherine's laugh was bitter. 6 months. 6 months, and I had no idea. "You weren't supposed to know," Amanda said, and there was an apology in her voice. "He's very good at compartmentalizing." "Catherine, please," James tried again. "She's lying. She's a crazy ex who can't let go." "The last message is from yesterday," Catherine said, still looking at the phone. "You told her you loved her yesterday, the day before our wedding." She turned to him then, and her composure cracked. "You bastard. You absolute bastard." She threw the phone at him. It hit his chest and fell to the ground. Then she pulled off her engagement ring and threw that too. "Catherine, if you just listen." "I'm done listening. I'm done with you. I'm done with all of this." She turned to the guests, to all those people in their expensive clothes who'd come to celebrate her perfect wedding. "I'm sorry you came all this way, but there isn't going to be a wedding." "Because my fiancé," her voice broke on the word, "is a liar and a cheat, and I refuse to marry someone who thinks I'm just a career move." Then she walked, not back down the aisle. That would have meant passing too many people. She walked to the side, across the lawn, toward the mansion. My mother jumped up to follow her, but my father caught her arm, held her back. The guests erupted in chaos, everyone talking at once. James standing there, looking shell-shocked. Amanda slipping away toward the parking lot before anyone could think to stop her. I watched it all through my binoculars, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief that Catherine knew, guilt for my role in it, and underneath everything, a gratifying continuation that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally understand what it felt like to be humiliated in front of everyone who mattered. Then I lowered the binoculars and started walking back through the woods. I was almost to my car when my phone rang, my mother. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello?" "Emma." Her voice was shaking. "Where are you?" "At home," I lied. "Why? What's wrong?" "It's the wedding. There was a woman who claimed James was cheating, and Catherine called it off, and everything is ruined." And she broke off, crying. I sat in my car and listened to my mother sob. Part of me felt vindicated. I'd tried to warn them. They hadn't listened. This wasn't my fault. But part of me felt like a monster, because I'd known this was coming. I'd helped orchestrate it. And I'd done it partly out of concern for Catherine, yes, but also out of anger, out of years of resentment, out of a deep, ugly need to watch her perfect life crack apart the way mine always had. "Mom," I said carefully, "is Catherine okay?" "She locked herself in one of the rooms. She won't let anyone in. Emma, I don't know what to do." "Have you tried calling her?" "She's not answering. Your father's talking to the guests, trying to, I don't even know, explain? There's nothing to explain. This is a nightmare." "What about James?" "He left. Just got in his car and left. Emma, what do I do?" I closed my eyes. "Let me talk to her." "You?" "Emma, you're not even—" She stopped herself, but I heard what she'd been about to say. "You're not even here. You're not part of this. You're not important enough." "I'm her sister," I said quietly. "Let me try." There was a pause. Then, reluctantly, "Fine, I'll text you which room, but Emma, please, please don't make this worse." The implication being that I somehow could make it worse, that everything wasn't already as bad as it could possibly be. I drove to the venue. The parking lot was chaos. Guests leaving early, the wedding planner yelling into her phone, caterers standing around looking confused. I parked in the back and slipped in through a side entrance, avoiding the main areas where I might run into my parents or anyone else who'd question what I was doing there. My mother had texted me the room number, second floor, east wing. I climbed the back stairs and found myself in a long hallway lined with closed doors. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers, probably meant to create ambiance for wedding photos that would never be taken. I found the right room and knocked softly. "Catherine, it's Emma." Silence. "I know you probably don't want to see me. I know you think I'm the last person who should be here. But Mom called and I'm worried about you." More silence. I was about to give up when I heard the lock click. The door opened a crack. Catherine stood there, still in her wedding dress, her makeup smeared from crying. She looked at me for a long moment, and I couldn't read her expression. "How did you know?" she asked finally. "Mom called and told me what happened." "No. How did you know about James before?" "When you came to my apartment with that video." I could have lied. Should have, probably. But looking at my sister's devastated face, I found I didn't have the energy for more deception. "I saw him with her at a coffee shop. It was an accident, but once I saw them together, I started paying attention. I found her social media. I found evidence. I tried to tell you." "You did." Her voice was hollow. "And I called you a liar. I said you were making it up out of jealousy. Catherine, you were right. You tried to warn me, and I was so sure I knew better. So convinced that you couldn't possibly have legitimate information because you were just you, the sister who never measured up." She laughed, a broken sound. "God, I'm such an idiot." "You're not an idiot. James is a good liar." Is he? Or did I just want to believe him so badly that I ignored every red flag? She opened the door wider, let me in. The room was elegant, probably meant for the bride to prepare. There was a makeup station with lights around the mirror, a plush couch, a window overlooking the gardens where her ceremony should have taken place. Catherine sank onto the couch, her dress pooling around her. 6 months. He was cheating on me for 6 months while we planned our wedding, while I was choosing flowers and tasting cakes and imagining our future together, and I had no idea. I sat beside her, careful not to wrinkle the dress. "He's a sociopath. He compartmentalized. It's not your fault for not seeing it." "Isn't it? Everyone thinks I'm so smart, so together, so perfect." She looked at me. "That's what you think, right? Perfect Catherine with her perfect life." I Yes, that's what I thought. I'm not perfect, Emma. I've never been perfect. I've just been very good at pretending. She pulled off her veil, the flowers coming loose from her hair. Do you know why I didn't want you as a bridesmaid? I'd assumed I knew, but I shook my head. Because you're real. You don't pretend. You don't put on a show for people. And I couldn't have that at my wedding because the entire thing was a show. The perfect venue, the perfect dress, the perfect groom. It all had to look immaculate because if it looked immaculate, maybe I wouldn't notice that I didn't actually feel anything. What do you mean? She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. I don't love James. I mean, I thought I did. I convinced myself I did. But looking back, I think I loved the idea of him. The successful, handsome husband who looked good in photos and impressed mom and dad. The relationship that proved I had it all together. Catherine, that woman today, Amanda, she said James told her he was marrying me for connections. And you know what the worst part is? I was marrying him for the same reason. Not for connections exactly, but for proof. Proof that I was successful at life. That I could check off all the boxes. Career? Check. Marriage to an impressive man? Check. Perfect wedding? Check. She laughed again, more bitter this time. Except I can't check that box now, can I? I didn't know what to say. This vulnerable, self-aware Catherine was someone I'd never met before. She'd always been so composed, so confident. Seeing her like this, broken and honest, was jarring. I'm sorry, I said finally. I'm sorry this happened to you. Are you? She looked at me directly. Or are you a little bit glad? Be honest. I wanted to lie, wanted to be the bigger person and say, of course not, I'd never want to see her hurt. But she'd asked for honesty, and maybe that's what we needed. A little bit, I admitted. Not glad that you're hurt, but glad that you're not perfect, that your life isn't the fairy tale I always thought it was. Is that terrible? No, it's human. She wiped at her eyes, smearing her mascara further. I've been terrible to you, Emma, not just with the wedding, for years. I made you feel invisible because it was easier than acknowledging you as competition. Because if you were just my less successful sister, then I could keep believing I was special. You are special. So are you. But I never told you that. I never made space for you to shine because I was too busy hogging all the light. She reached out and took my hand. I'm sorry for all of it, for the wedding, for the bridesmaids, for every time I made you feel less than. You deserved better from me. I felt tears prick my eyes. I tried to warn you. I really did try. I know, and I didn't listen. That's on me, not you. She squeezed my hand. That woman today, Amanda, did you know she was going to do that? This was dangerous ground. I could lie, probably should lie, but Catherine was being honest with me for the first time in our lives. I owed her the same courtesy. Yes, I said. We met, we talked, we planned it together. I braced myself for anger, for accusations, but Catherine just nodded slowly. Good, she said. Good? I'm glad, because if she hadn't done that, I would have married him. And then what? Found out in a year, 5 years, after we had kids? She shuddered. At least this way, it's public and humiliating, but it's done. Clean break. No wondering what might have been. You're not angry? Oh, I'm furious. At James, at myself, at the entire situation. But not at you. You tried to help. You did help, even if the method was dramatic. She almost smiled. Very dramatic. Mom is probably having a breakdown. She is. She called me crying. Of course she did. This was supposed to be her moment, too. The mother of the bride at the social event of the season. Catherine's voice was bitter. Do you know how many times she told me this wedding was going to define our family's social standing? Like my marriage was a networking opportunity? She wanted you to be happy. She wanted me to be impressive. There's a difference. Catherine stood up, started pacing. The wedding dress made soft swishing sounds. I need to get out of this dress. I need to get out of here. But I can't face everyone. Can't walk through that crowd of people who all just watched my life implode. There's a back staircase, I said. That's how I got up here. It leads to a side door. You could leave without seeing anyone. Come with me? It wasn't a question I'd expected. Catherine had never needed me before, never asked for my help or my presence. It had always been her leading and me following at a distance. Of course, I said. She changed out of the wedding dress quickly, pulling on jeans and a t-shirt that someone had left in the room. She bundled the dress into a garment bag without ceremony, like it was any old piece of clothing instead of a designer gown that cost thousands of dollars. I'm never wearing white again, she said. Too much pressure. We took the back stairs. I led the way, checking around corners to make sure the path was clear. We made it to my car without encountering anyone. Where to? I asked as we got in. Anywhere that isn't here. I drove. No destination in mind, just away from the venue. Catherine stared out the window, not speaking. After about 20 minutes, I pulled into a diner, one of those places that looks like it hasn't changed since the 1970s. Breakfast food, I suggested. It's comfort food. At 4 in the afternoon? Pancakes don't care what time it is. She almost smiled. Okay. We slid into a booth in the back. The waitress took one look at Catherine's blotchy face and didn't ask questions, just brought coffee and menus. We ordered pancakes and eggs and bacon, way too much food, but neither of us had eaten all day. I should call Mom, Catherine said, staring at her phone. Let her know I'm okay. Do you want to call her? Not even a little bit. But she typed out a text. I'm safe. I'm with Emma. I need some time. Her phone immediately started ringing. She declined the call. It rang again. She turned it off. That feels good, she said. Just not dealing with it for a moment. The food arrived, and we ate in silence for a while. The pancakes were mediocre, but they were warm and sweet, and exactly what we both needed. What happens now? I asked finally. I have no idea. Cancel the honeymoon, obviously. Move out of the apartment we were going to share. Tell everyone at work that the wedding's off. Figure out how to return a few hundred wedding gifts. She stabbed at her eggs. Restart my entire life, I guess. You don't have to do it alone. She looked up at me. Why are you being nice to me? After everything, why don't you hate me? I did, sometimes, but you're still my sister, and maybe we could try to actually be sisters, not competitors or strangers, but actual family. I'd like that. Her voice was soft. I'd really like that. We finished eating. The diner was nearly empty. Just us and an old man at the counter reading a newspaper. It felt like a pocket outside of time, a place where weddings didn't fall apart and families didn't fracture. Can I tell you something? Catherine said. Something I've never told anyone? Of course. I'm lonely. I have been for years. I have colleagues and acquaintances and people who want to network with me, but I don't have friends, not real ones. And I did that to myself. I was so busy being perfect that I forgot to be human. You were human today, very human. I was a disaster today. Yeah, but an honest disaster. That's worth something. She laughed, and this time it sounded more real. An honest disaster. I like that. Maybe that should be my new brand. Better than perfect robot. Definitely better than perfect robot. My phone buzzed. Multiple texts from my mother. I showed them to Catherine. She's not happy we left together, Catherine observed. She's not happy about anything right now. Should we go back? Face the music? I thought about it, about my mother's tears and my father's disappointment and all those guests who'd witnessed Catherine's humiliation. About James, who'd probably already crafted his story about the crazy ex-girlfriend who'd ruined everything. Or, I said slowly, we could not. Not? We could just leave, not forever, but for tonight. Get a hotel room, order room service, watch bad movies. Let them deal with the aftermath for one night while we just exist. Catherine was quiet for a moment. Then, yes, let's do that. We found a hotel 20 minutes away. Nothing fancy, just a standard chain hotel with clean rooms and decent Wi-Fi. We checked in and went up to our room. 2 queen beds, a view of the parking lot, and absolutely no pressure to be anything other than what we were. Catherine called our mother from the hotel room phone, not her cell. Told her we were safe, we were together, and we'd be home tomorrow. She endured 10 minutes of our mother's hysteria before gently but firmly saying goodbye. That was exhausting, she said, flopping onto one of the beds. Being Catherine's daughter usually is. She looked at me. Being Emma's daughter must have been hard too, always being compared to me. It wasn't great, I admitted, but it made me stronger in some ways. I learned to define myself outside of other people's expectations. Teach me how to do that. What? Teach me how to not need everyone's approval. How to just be myself without worrying about looking perfect. She propped herself up on her elbows. Because I clearly haven't figured it out. Catherine, I don't have all the answers. You have more than I do right now. We spent the rest of the evening talking, really talking, maybe for the first time in our lives. Catherine told me about the pressure she'd always felt to be the golden child, how our parents' expectations had shaped every decision she'd made. I told her about the loneliness of always being second best, how I'd learned to make myself small to avoid comparison. We ordered pizza and watched a romantic comedy, ironically enough. Catherine cried during the happy ending. That's how it's supposed to work, she said, not like this morning. This morning was a nightmare. This morning was a gift. I just don't know it yet. She wiped her eyes. But I will. Someday I'll look back and be grateful that Amanda stood up, that I didn't marry James, that my life imploded before I wasted more years on something fake. That's very mature of you. Ask me tomorrow. I'll probably be less mature tomorrow. We fell asleep with the TV still on, both of us exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I saw Catherine sitting by the window, staring out at the parking lot. Can't sleep? I asked quietly. Just thinking. About what could have been. About what actually is. She turned to look at me. I keep playing it over in my head. The ceremony. Amanda standing up. The look on James's face when he realized he was caught. Regrets? About James? No. About how I treated you? Yes. So many. She came back and sat on the edge of my bed. I want to be better, Emma. A better sister, a better person. I don't know how yet, but I want to try. We'll figure it out together. Together? I like the sound of that. We went home the next morning, faced our parents, who were devastated and confused and angry in equal measure. My mother kept asking, what happened? How could this happen? What would she tell people? My father was quieter, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Catherine handled it better than I expected. She was calm, direct. She explained that James had been unfaithful, that someone with evidence had interrupted the ceremony, that she'd made the right decision not to marry him. But the scandal, my mother kept saying, what will people think? I don't care what people think, Catherine said, and I could hear the new steel in her voice. I care that I didn't marry someone who was using me. Over the next few weeks, I watched my sister transform. Not dramatically. She was still Catherine, still poised and intelligent and driven, but there was a softness to her now, a willingness to be vulnerable. She started therapy. She took time off work. She called me, not because she needed something, but just to talk. We became friends, actual friends. We met for coffee and complained about our mothers hovering. We binged TV shows and debated character motivations. We told each other the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. She helped me with my job search, using her connections but letting me stand on my own merit. When I got an offer from a marketing firm in Seattle, she was the first person I told. "Seattle?" she said. "That's far." "I know, but it's a good opportunity. And maybe some distance would be healthy." Distance from mom and dad, or distance from me? From the history, from being the invisible sister in your shadow. I need to build something that's mine. She hugged me, which still felt strange and new. "I'm proud of you, Emma, truly proud." "I'm proud of you too, for surviving this, for becoming more honest." "Well, I had a good teacher." She pulled back, smiled. "My little sister, who tried to warn me and got rejected, but helped me anyway, who orchestrated the most dramatic wedding interruption in history. Who could have left me to figure it out alone, but didn't?" "About that," I said, "I need to tell you something." "Oh God, what?" "I wasn't completely noble. When I helped Amanda plan the interruption, part of me did want to see you taken down a peg. Part of me enjoyed watching your perfect life crack." I waited for anger, but Catherine just nodded. "I know, and you know what? I get it. I would have felt the same way. The fact that you're honest about it means more than if you'd pretended to be a saint." "So we're okay?" "We're better than okay. We're real." The day before I left for Seattle, Catherine took me to lunch. Not at an expensive restaurant with cloth napkins and a wine list, but at a taco truck near the park where we used to play as kids. "Remember this place?" she asked as we sat on a bench with our food. "You used to steal my chips." "I was teaching you to guard your resources," she smiled. "Or I was just a brat, probably the latter." We ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching kids play on the swings. "I heard from Amanda," Catherine said suddenly. "What? When?" "Last week. She found me on LinkedIn, sent me a message, apologized for the dramatics, said she hoped I was doing okay." "What did you say?" "I thanked her, told her she'd done me a favor, even if it didn't feel like it at the time." Catherine crumpled up her napkin. "She and James are done, by the way. For real this time. Apparently, seeing him exposed as a cheater killed whatever feeling she had left." "Good for her. Good for both of us." Catherine looked at me. "I've been thinking about that day, about Amanda standing up in front of everyone. It was cruel and public and humiliating. It was also the most honest moment of that entire wedding process. Maybe the most honest moment of my whole relationship with James." "Do you ever miss him?" "I miss who I thought he was, but that person never existed." She paused. "I ran into him, actually, at a coffee shop downtown. He tried to apologize, to explain. I didn't let him, just walked away. It felt good." "I bet it did." "The weird thing is, I'm happier now than I was when we were together. Scared and uncertain and single, but happier. Because I'm not pretending anymore. I'm not maintaining this perfect facade. I'm just Me. Whoever that turns out to be. I think she's pretty great. I'm still figuring it out, but yeah, I think she might be okay. We sat there until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Two sisters who'd spent most of their lives as strangers, finally learning how to be family. "Will you come back?" Catherine asked. "To visit?" "Of course, and you can come to Seattle, see the Space Needle, eat too much salmon, complain about the rain." "It's a deal." She drove me home. We hugged in the driveway, and this time it didn't feel awkward or forced. It felt like goodbye between people who would say hello again soon. "Thank you," Catherine said, "for not giving up on me, for trying to warn me even when I was horrible to you, for being there when everything fell apart." "You're my sister," I said simply. "That's what sisters do." I wish I'd known that sooner. We know it now. That's what matters. I left for Seattle the next morning, started my new job, found an apartment, built a life that was entirely my own. Catherine called every week, and we talked about everything and nothing. She started dating again, slowly and carefully. She cut back her hours at work. She learned to say no to our mother's demands. And me? I learned that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about truth, about forcing people to see what they've been refusing to acknowledge, about creating space for something more honest to emerge. The best revenge wasn't ruining Catherine's wedding. It was realizing I didn't need to be invisible anymore. It was understanding that my worth wasn't measured by comparison to my sister. It was building a relationship with Catherine based on honesty instead of competition. It was forgiving her, forgiving myself, and moving forward into something new. 6 months after I moved to Seattle, Catherine called with news. "I'm seeing someone," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "He's a high school teacher, drives a 10-year-old Honda, has student loan debt. Mom is horrified." "And you?" "I'm happy, actually genuinely happy. He's kind and funny, and he doesn't care about impressing anyone. He likes me, not for my connections or my career. It's terrifying and wonderful. I'm so glad." "Me too. And Emma, I learned that from you. From watching you build a life based on what you wanted, not what other people expected. You taught me it was possible." "We taught each other," I said. "That's what sisters do." Sometimes I think about that day, the wedding that never was, the ceremony interrupted, the perfect life that cracked open to reveal all the flaws beneath. It was messy and painful and dramatic. It was also necessary, because out of that wreckage, we built something real. Not perfect, not polished, but honest and true and worth more than any fairy tale ending. And in the end, isn't that the best revenge of all? Not destroying someone, but helping them find their way to something better, even if they have to fall apart first to get there, especially then.